turn the power button off.
I can spread
It does the trick.
Maybe 6 pieces divided by 6.
Sorry for the screaming baby. She's not a
What
happy
screaming
camper
baby?
woman.
I don't
Which
hear
I'm
it.
hoping she will be soon because we're actually going to camp soon. Yeah, Erin already got to go, the cheater.
Perfect.
Welcome, one and all. If you guys have been out for a while, you may not know, we started in on the book of Daniel. We finished our overview of the entire Bible. And last week we were in Daniel chapter 1. This week we'll be in Daniel chapter 2. If you don't have a Bible, get one. They're in a giant bookshelf over there. Here at church, we read the Bible. That's what we do.
Well, yeah, it's church.
What? Okay.
Yes.
I guess I'll understand now.
Yeah. Yeah, you can bring that in the car. I still recommend you use it as a last resort and try and hang out with people in the car. Just so you get to know people. Because you're going to be with them, like, at camp.
Camp is lit. You gotta be with people.
About 2 hours. And there's usually some sort of stop halfway at either Red Bluff or Reading.
That's better than Mount Gilead. Every time
I used to
go
live
out.
at Red Bluff.
Yeah.
Then my mom moved. Now I live in Cottonwood.
Oh yeah, Cottonwood. So you guys drive pretty far for church, huh?
I drive Johnny. I drive on Friday.
Oh, I gotcha. So you're staying in town in between.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
I drive here on Friday.
Can I give one word of
And then I
advice?
drive back
Can we do it later?
on Monday.
All right, open up your Bibles to the book of Daniel. If you got one of our borrowed blue, it's going to be page 725. 725.
I said right to it. I said
Nice.
right to it.
I have no idea. You just have to find the book of Daniel.
Sounds easy.
There is a table of contents in the front. It's right after Ezekiel.
You could have just got one of the blue ones and it would be a lot easier.
Well, large print is fine, I guess.
I guess.
I don't know.
Fun unless
Wait.
you.
725. There is no page number 725, but it is page 725. They don't put page numbers on the title pages. I don't know why, but they don't.
I have one question.
Yeah.
This is Daniel chapter 2,
Spinning, it's
and
fine.
you're going to Daniel chapter
There is no
What also starts on the same page as Daniel chapter 1. Daniel chapter 2.
2.
Alright, Daniel chapter 2. So if you weren't here last week, which I see a few unfamiliar faces, so that means some of you guys weren't here last week. Just to give you a quick refresher, Daniel is an Israelite. His country fractured in half. The top half kept the name, still called Israel. Bottom half got called Judah. That's actually where he's from. He's from the Judah half. Judah got conquered by Babylon. Babylon kidnapped first. They eventually kidnapped a lot more, but first they captured all the noble families, all the royal families, of which Daniel was one of them. So he's brought off to Babylon as a slave, and instead of being given some sort of grimy job or hard work job or difficult job, he's actually put into training to become a wise man, to become an advisor to the king. Their hope is, since Daniel's so young, he's about 15 when he's kidnapped, that they'll be able to brainwash him. They'll be able to recondition him into being Babylonian in the way he thinks, in the way he speaks, in the way he acts. So that hopefully by the time he's 18, after his 3 years of wise man training, he can become a Babylonian advisor and not be an Israelite advisor. They're trying to get all the Israelite out of him. Now that didn't go so well. The first thing they tried was names. They tried to give him a Babylonian name, and he didn't like it. But he went by whichever thing people called him. They tried to give him Babylonian food, and he flat out refused, but he did it in a very respectful way. He did it in a way that honored the authorities. And that's something you're going to find out about Daniel, is that even when he disagrees with someone, even when God tells him flat out, no, you can't obey them, he still does it in a really respectful way, because he doesn't have any reason to disrespect them. And you might be thinking, well, that's dumb. He was kidnapped by them. But yeah, it's weird. Daniel respects his authorities regardless of how they got into power, regardless of whether they're deserving or not. Now in Daniel chapter 2, we're going to see some more stuff about the king Daniel's going to serve under, King Nebuchadnezzar. The timing of this story is 2 years after Daniel's been kidnapped. He's only about 17 years old, 603 BC, and he hasn't finished his training yet. And that's important because in the beginning of the story, we're going to see all the wise men gathered together, and Daniel's not there. He's missing. Because he hasn't graduated yet, he's not one of their number exactly. We'll see. Different parts of the story, he's lumped in with the wise men. Other parts of the story, he's not lumped in with the wise men because he's not a full-fledged wise man yet. So anyways, this is the portion of history where Daniel's story takes place. Just a few years here in the end of the 600s BC, and then eventually most of his life takes place in the 500s BC. These are all the books of the Old Testament put into time order rather than the order they actually appear in your Bible. The order in the Bible does not reflect the time they occurred in, it reflects the theme, the topic, or the way the book's written. I know that can be really confusing the first time you pick up a Bible and you're just like, I don't even understand what's going on. If you read several books, you'll realize the stories don't always interconnect one after the other because the books aren't in time order. They're not chronological. This, however, is chronological, and so you can kind of see end of 2nd Chronicles, end of 2nd Kings overlaps with Daniel. Ezra overlaps with Daniel, and then some of the other prophets actually overlap with Daniel, like Habakkuk, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, Lamentations. They all overlap just a smidge. So, chapter 2, let's go ahead and dive in. We're going to see something that happened to King of Babylon, King Nebuchadnezzar. Chapter 2, verse 1 says, "One night during the 2nd year of his reign, Nebuchadnezzar had such a disturbing dream that he couldn't sleep. He called in his magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, and astrologers, and he demanded that they tell him what he had dreamed. As they stood before the king, he said, 'I have had a dream that deeply troubles me, and I must know what it means.' Then the astrologers answered the king in Aramaic, 'Long live the king! Tell us the dream, and we will tell you what it means.'" So just a quick thing, why does it mention that they all start speaking in Aramaic? Well, because if you're reading this book not in English, if you're reading the original scrolls of Daniel, the book starts out in Hebrew, and right here at that line, after he says they answered him in Aramaic, the book switches to Aramaic and stays Aramaic.
Because of where they are.
Because of where they are. It's exactly right. Daniel grew up reading, writing, and speaking Hebrew, and he's writing this for Hebrew-speaking people. So the book starts in Hebrew. The whole first chapter and the first few lines of chapter 2 are all in Hebrew. And then he starts writing in Aramaic because he's learning that language. He's had 2 years of Aramaic by the time this part happens. However, we think he wrote the book when he was an old man. We think he looked back on his life, wrote the whole thing after it happened. Not exactly sure, but that's our guess. And so, yeah, after everyone starts speaking Aramaic, he switches. Why does he do that? Because he starts quoting people. And he actually wanted to get the quotes exactly right. And if he wrote the book in Hebrew, he'd have to translate everything they said. It wouldn't be an exact quote. It'd be a translation of what they said. So he just stays to Aramaic. That's the language everyone else in the book is going to speak. So that's how he writes the book. He gets to quote them perfectly. So just a weird little side note, it switches to Aramaic at this point. It's all in English for us, which is nice. So then in Aramaic, the astrologers say in verse 4, "Long live the king! Tell us the dream and we will tell you what it means." Verse 5, "But the king said to the astrologers, 'I am serious about this, and if you don't tell me what my dream was and what it means, you will be torn limb from limb, and your houses will be turned into heaps of rubble. But if you tell me what I dreamed and what it means, I will give you many wonderful gifts and honors. Just tell me the dream and what it means.'" This is interesting. Why is he demanding that they tell him what the dream is?
To prove it. You forget?
He forgot. No, he didn't forget. Yes?
To prove if they were really able to tell the future, if they were just liars.
Okay, this is it. We have to unravel this. You're totally right, but why is she right? This is the weird part, okay? Obviously, it's pretty impossible for people to guess your dream. I mean, one lucky guess, that's about all you got in you. After that, you're probably just going to be wrong in every guess they're on. Honestly, I mean, all the science we have, all the medical knowledge we have, you strap a bunch of electrodes to your head, I still couldn't tell you what you're dreaming about. I might, with all the science we have in the whole world, be able to tell you your brain was lighting up in the happy places while you had your dream. So you had a happy dream. Or your brain was lighting up in the fear centers, so you were having a nightmare. But I wouldn't be able to tell you what the dream was. No amount of medical science is going to be able to read your subconscious thoughts. So really the king's asking for something impossible. He's asking for something that can't be done, and yet he thinks it can be done. And he's not wrong, and this is kind of why. The fact that he woke up and even asked anyone what the dream meant means he thinks the dream means something. Right? That makes some logical sense, right? If it was just some random dream about falling down a slide full of ice cream, he wouldn't wake up in the middle of the night and go, "What does it mean?" He'd probably just think, "Yeah, I had too much sherbet before bed." Sherbet was actually invented in this part of the world, so it's not unlikely to think. Yeah, I don't know what the timing was, but it was the Middle East. So, I don't know. We'll have to check what year sherbet was invented. So, I don't know. But his dream had to look like it meant something, or else he wouldn't be asking people what it meant. And this is where it gets interesting. If your dream actually means something, that is very special, because dreams only come from two places. They can come from you, or they can come from not you.
Who's not you?
You can't call me wrong. That's just logic. They come from you or they come from not you. And if they come from you, then you can't learn anything from them except about yourself. Because really, you're not going to learn the future from your own head. You're not going to learn about other people from your own head. You're only going to find things in the dreams that come from you that you already knew. Yeah. So what he's guessing here, we can kind of deduce. We can kind of guess at is that deduce. It's a very short word. It's D-E-D-U-C-E. It's pretty small. So we can kind of deduce the king assumes his dream is special. The king assumes his dream is not from inside his own head, and we get that from later in the story. We're kind of assuming the king thinks his dream came from somewhere else.
God.
He was given the dream. Could be from a god. The Babylonians worship many fake gods. Could be from angels or demons. They believed in supernatural beings that weren't quite gods. Could be from some sort of ghost or spirit. They believed in those.
From another person.
Well, I don't know if
'Cause
they
they could tell
believed
them.
in
Well,
other
ghosts,
people
like, sort of, like,
implanting
tell them.
dreams,
Well,
Inception style.
Ghosts
So.
are s-
Well, they could like tell them, and then he'd like have a dream at the night about it.
Well, I
like,
don't think he's guessing that because
You're
then he'll
gonna eat a
probably be able
pencil
to figure it
tomorrow.
out. So he's thinking it came from outside of it, and he's thinking it came from somewhere supernatural. That's why he leans on these guys. Because these guys aren't magicians in the modern sense, like we think of. Smart people who come up with a trick to show you where you can't figure out what the trick is. Okay? That's how we think of magicians. They're really smart. They know how to do stuff that we, faster than we can watch, quicker than we can see, use a mirror in a way we couldn't think of. Boom, they do something, we're like, whoa, that's amazing. How'd you do that? That's not how they thought about their magicians. Their magicians in their minds were doing magic. They were using superpowers to do things that no human could do. And they weren't imbued with these powers naturally. They got these powers, they borrowed these powers from some sort of divine or supernatural being. So when you have these astrologers, they're talking about people who can look into the stars and find out messages from the gods. When they talk about magicians, they're talking about people who have superpowers given to them by the gods. When they talk about, what was the third category? I already forgot.
Wise men.
Enchanters, they're talking about people who, again, have special abilities to call up spirits, to call up gods in front of them and talk to them. So when he brings in these groups of people, he's not just asking them to do something impossible, he's asking them to do their job. They've been claiming their whole lives that they can do things that are impossible. They've been claiming their whole lives that they can do things that no human can do. They've been claiming their whole lives that they can do magic, that they can talk to gods, that they can summon the spirits to be there in the room. So when he says, hey guys, tell me what I dreamed, it came from one of your friends, one of your gods, one of your spirits, one of your angels, one of your demons. They're the ones who must have given it to me. He's not saying do something impossible. He's saying just do your job, guys. That's what you're supposed to be able to do. And then what do they say? That's impossible. No one can do that. Wait a second.
So are you
That's
glad?
exactly what you guys are supposed to be able to do.
What?
You're supposed to be able to talk to gods. You're supposed
They're
to be able to talk to the
yeah.
spirits. So if my dream came from one of the gods or the spirits, you should be able to figure it out.
I can do that.
All you guys go back into your corners, go back into your temples, go back into your rooms, and just talk to the people you know, talk to the spirits you know, talk to the gods you know. Get back to me, tell me what dream was. Then I'll know you can really talk to the gods.
Well, you can talk to one god.
Well, but if they can talk to any god that knows what the dream is, then they'll verify
Well,
they
because
talked to
they
the
had all
right
these
one.
Millions
And that's what he's
millions of
asking
fake
for.
gods.
Not just prove you can do what you say you can do. Prove you're talking to the right God in the first place. What if they've got some Loki god who's like, yeah, I know what the dream means.
You farted.
What if there's some trickster god? He wants to know, by not telling them what the dream is, that they have to have talked to the right god, or else they'll get it wrong.
And they'll die.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, they don't say, yes, we'll go talk to the gods and we'll figure it out. They don't say, give us 3 days, give us an hour, give us something, and we'll go figure out. They don't say, give us some sacrifices to bring to the gods. They don't say that. Why don't they say that?
Because
Because
they
they know
don't
they're
know
not.
if they're real.
They're gonna. It doesn't work.
They know they're fakers. They know
never
that there's
had-
nothing real to their power. They know it's all tricks, it's all smoke, it's all mirrors, it's all fake.
But the people
Because
believe
they've never
it.
had to do it.
That's why the king demands. The
They-
king thinks they should be able to do it.
They say they do it. They can do it, but they never do it.
He doesn't want them to pull the wool over his eyes, and that's what he says. He says as much. Check it out. Verse 7, they plead one more time. Then again, Verse 7, they said again, please, your majesty, tell us the dream and we will tell you what it means. Verse 8, the king replied, I know what you are doing. You're stalling for time because you know I'm serious when I say, if you don't tell me the dream, you are doomed. So you have conspired to tell me lies, hoping I'll change my mind. But tell me the dream, and then I'll know that you can tell me what it means. So he might not have even suspected they were fakes. He just wanted to make sure they weren't going to make up something fancy. Because, you know, in this kingdom, if you want to get ahead, all you have to do is impress the king.
Wait, say that again?
So if they make up something fancy and they're like, oh yeah, your dream, it means
You're wonderful.
you're amazing.
Wait,
And everyone loves you.
You're
they
great.
want a head?
They want to get ahead.
Like
Not
get
a
up in
head.
the kingdom.
Ahead.
Oh.
One word.
Right.
I'm like an actual head. They want
Yes,
an actual head.
yes. If you impress the king.
They're not that weird.
Okay, if this is how
They
it
want
works.
it on a
You
platter
impress the
for
king.
breakfast.
And he gives you lots of
They
heads.
give you a servant's head, and you eat it,
They're not that strange.
and then
They're
you
strange.
go up a level.
I
They're
call
not
for the
that
eyeball for
strange.
dessert.
They're
All right, so
strange.
not that strange. No. They want to go up in rank. They want to go up in status. They want to be more in charge.
Got
They want
it.
to be the top guy, and so they want to just lie. King, tell us your dream. He's like, oh yeah, here's my dream. They're like, oh yeah, that means you're the best. That means you're amazing.
Wait,
that
what
means your
happens
kingdom will never end.
Like when, like, say if the king had a dream and he couldn't like understand it and had one of his people translate it,
Mhm.
would like something happen to them if they got it wrong or something?
Well,
Or-
but how do you translate a dream wrong? All you have to do is lie and say stuff that can't be wrong.
True.
And the best way to lie to someone who's all about themselves, who's selfish and prideful, tell them good stuff about themselves. That doesn't even matter if it's wrong. They're
You've
still
got a
gonna
nice
like hearing
beard.
it. Your beard's amazing.
Yeah.
Your fingernails and toenails are trimmed perfectly.
That
I
would
don't know.
just get
Your nose looks like
You have a nose.
canter.
Your nose is a tower made of ivory. I don't know.
You have a
So
face.
What?
it's actually from the Bible. It's a joke.
Ciao.
Different part of the Bible.
Wait, there's a
Bible verse about your nose being a tower of ivory. It's in Song of Solomon.
Wait, there's a joke in the Bible.
No, that's not a joke. I made a joke. It's
Oh.
actually in the Bible. It's not a joke in the Bible. I made it a joke.
Like, there's a joke in the Bible.
There's plenty of jokes in
He
the
made
Bible.
a joke.
Gosh, Jesus is sarcastic a lot. You should go back and read the Gospels.
I
He's
will.
sarcastic all the time. It's great. All right. He says stuff to people who've memorized the entire Old Testament. Have you not read? And I don't know if that's funny to you guys, but that's hilarious to me.
Yeah.
I don't
If
see
you
you laughing.
guys memorized something,
I don't see
and then
why.
I quoted to you, like, you don't know this part, do you? It's like, no, that's our entire group. That's our club. We are the Memorize the Old Testament club. That's what we do. You can't quote stuff to us.
That's like our
Yeah.
job.
That's dumb. And then
Oh,
he'll say
God.
other stuff like, don't you guys know what it says? They're like, what? Which part? I know all the parts. And he'll just tell them a part. And they're like, yeah, I didn't really think about that part. It's great.
And it
Anyway.
says-
God
So
said
like-
tacos would rain from the sky.
No, he
Yes.
doesn't say that. But he does say manna.
Uh,
Verse 10. The astrologers replied to the king, no one on earth, they're kind of in super defense panic mode right now,
I
can
know.
tell the king his dream. And no king, however great or powerful, has ever asked such a thing of any magician, enchanter, or astrologer. The king's demand is impossible. No one except the gods can tell you your dream. And they do not live here among people. So here's the deal.
Lies.
They're not willing to admit we're fakes. They're not willing to admit we can't do anything. What they're saying is the gods aren't in right now.
Lies.
They're not living here among us. You
They're on a
know.
vacation in
They're
Hawaii.
out at the moment.
Lies.
They're
Well,
eating their salads.
it's all lies, but what they're trying to do is do a lie that will make them still have a job next week.
They're eating their salads.
They're off eating a fancy meal. They're at a feast. They're
Their salads.
they're on
hanging
vacation.
out- They're
They're on
hanging
the
out with the other
phone.
gods.
They're
They're at a
eating their
god party.
salad because
Anything but they're here right now because I'm sorry, we just can't ask them right now.
They're gone. They're out with their buddies.
It's just
They're-
bad timing, King.
they're sleeping.
Verse 12. Yeah, that's from another part of the Bible.
They're in the bathroom.
Oh my gosh, that is from the Bible. Do you guys know that joke?
What?
Elijah, prophet, challenges a bunch of fake prophets. He's one. They're like 500. And their religion is about killing people. That's their whole religion. It's when Baal worship earlier in history made its way into Israel. Yeah. And it's before this part of the Bible. It's earlier on. And Elijah challenges him. He's like, well, I know your God's fake, so we're going to have a God off. We're going to have a God test.
Our God's peeing.
Okay, but they don't make the joke. He makes the joke about their God. It's great. They make altars. They put a cow on the altar.
The fire.
And the challenge is you have to get your God to light the barbecue. That's the challenge. You can't light the barbecue. You have to get your God to light the barbecue. And so the Baal prophets dance, sing, cut themselves, scream, lay in the dirt, roll in the dirt, rub blood on each other. I mean, they do every form of worship they can think of except kill people because that would mean themselves.
But do they
That's
kill
the other
people?
form of Baal worship they don't like to do because they don't like to kill prophets. They like to kill random strangers. Stupid. So
How do they get
they
the
do
blood?
all this, no sparks, no flames, no fire on the Baal side. The whole time though, Elijah's like, "What's wrong? Can your God not hear you?
Louder.
Is he deaf? Perhaps you should scream louder. Oh, perhaps he is away on vacation, or perhaps he's attending to his business, which is the polite way of saying on the pot. Going to the bathroom, taking a poop." And he's just making jokes at them the whole time. And he's like one dude. They're 500 with knives. He's unarmed. And he's just making fun of him, mocking him. And then it comes to his turn. They give up. They're given their certain amount of time they can try for. Now it's his turn. He's like, you know what? This isn't a hard enough test for God. Let's pour water on the barbecue. Let's get all the wood soaking wet. You know what? That's not hard enough. Let's dig a moat around the barbecue. We're going to fill the moat with water. So now it's a barbecue on an island that's soaking in water. And then he just prays. God, I know that you're real. I need all the people here to know you're real. Not just the 500 prophets, but all the Israelites that are watching that have been stuck under Baal worship for years and years and years. God, I just want you to show them once and for all you're real. The second he ends the prayer, a column of fire wider than the moat was around comes down from the sky, hits no one else, perfect aim, laser line, just shoots right where that barbecue was, Elijah's barbecue, and it completely consumes the cow's bones, the wood of the barbecue, and this is the best part,
What are the wood
the
bones?
rocks at the bottom
What?
of the barbecue that hold the wood in.
How?
That is a
Oh,
small
wait.
barbecue.
Yeah.
What about the rocks?
That's like the
bones?
whole Weber going up with the flames,
That
right?
wouldn't be a tasty barbecue.
No, there's nothing left. It's scorched
It's-
dirt. That's
it's
all
like-
that's left. All the water's
something
gone, the rocks are
UFO.
gone, the wood's gone, the cow's gone. It's all gone. And at that point, everyone's so sure that the God of Israel is real and the God named Baal is fake. They all line up the 500 prophets of Baal and hold them there until Elijah goes down the line and kills them with their own weapons.
Oh, jeez.
What?
Every single prophet of Baal. Well, think
Yay.
about it. They aren't just false religion practitioners. Their religion for years was killing people. So every one of these priests is a legalized murderer.
That's
The
a good
king of their
point.
land made it legal. He said, because his queen liked Baal, we're going to make Baal worship legal. And every one of these priests for years has been killing people.
Killed kids.
And they killed babies and kids and
Egypt
family
all
members.
over again.
Talk about it around the table.
What was
It's
that?
terrible. And so, yeah, when he went down the line and killed all of them, that was not murder. That was justice. Every single one of them was a murderer, time and time again.
Well,
Justice.
because they were killing each other.
Well, they weren't killing the other priests. They were only killing
They're killing like the slaves.
They, for themselves, when they wanted to worship Baal, they would cut themselves and bleed on the altar. And then they'd bandage it up and live. They didn't like to kill each other. for
How deep
Baal.
would they cut? Like just.
Oh, I don't know. They
slit?
don't mention the depth of the cut.
That's
But,
just like-
they
like,
live, so
if
not
they
that
cut their
deep.
whole arm off.
An
That's gonna be the
inch
perfect
and
sacrifice.
14
right.
centimeters and 2
So that's
millimeters.
Baal. That's what Babylon's into. Back to our story. I don't want to run out of time because the story is amazing. Verse 12. The king was furious. Remember, the astrologers just said no one can do it. No king's ever asked this. You're being too bold. You're being too greedy. You can't ask this of people. It's impossible. So the king was furious, verse 12, when he heard this, and he ordered that all the wise men of Babylon be executed. So he was dead serious. Verse 13, and because of the king's decree, men were sent to find and kill Daniel and his friends. So here's the deal. Daniel and his friends, they're wise men in training. They're advisors in training. So they're not called in the middle of the night when the king wants help. They're still left in their room or their house, whatever they got. I don't actually know. Room in the palace, house in the town, who knows. But anyways, they're not called in the middle of the night. But when the king makes the decree, all the wise men are to die, that covers Daniel. That affects Daniel, even though he never got a chance. It's not fair, but this is kind of how their kingdom works. And this is going to come into play as we get into what the dream is. In the Babylonian kingdom, the king's word was law. There was no law except the king's word. Law could flip and change as frequently as the king got up and gave a speech. As frequently as the king decided to say something, the laws could change.
So wait, like he could, he can go up and like tell.
He could say on Tuesdays you're not allowed to wear shoes or else you die, and they would do it.
What?
Any stupid, ridiculous thing he wanted, he'd say it, they'd do it.
Wait,
So
can
he
say,
says
like,
all the wise
you
men
have to
die.
blink.
They
Well,
die.
that's our
The
limit.
very next few
Wait,
verses.
so like you have to blink at least like 4 times a minute?
If you got something to say, just, raise your hand, okay? The very next few verses, the captain of the guard, is going door to door. He ends up at Daniel's house and just go kill Daniel. It wasn't like they were going to arrest Daniel, put him on trial, and then kill him. He was going to Daniel's house to kill Daniel.
What did
Now, the
Daniel
king already said how they're going to die. And this isn't a joke. This is a real Babylonian punishment. He said, you will be torn limb from limb. That is a real punishment. They tie each of your limbs to a horse, 4 horses, 1 for each limb, and then they whip the horses. And they have the horses run in 4 different directions.
Ooh.
That is a real Babylonian punishment.
That's
You
terrible.
don't live through that. Horses are too strong. They're just too strong.
There's
Maybe
no
you're
way
gonna be
to,
just
like,
a body
stop
without
it.
no legs and arms.
Well,
limbless guy.
Truth be told, you're not going to live very long without several of your limbs.
Well, because you're gonna be bleeding to death.
And no one's going to help you because you were executed. That's your form of execution.
Well, that-
Serious pain, serious panic.
Darth Vader,
Your
but,
limbs
like,
are gone in your
It is a
arms.
crazy bad punishment, but this is what the king says, and this is what they're going to do.
That'd be
So, here's the deal. King's word, absolutely law. King says you're all going to be torn from limb if you can't answer me. They don't answer him. Boom. They're all going to get torn from limb. Limb from limb. Now, they don't just do this anywhere with
Wait,
any
how
old
many
set of
people are getting
ropes.
that?
They actually have a setup for it
You see that?
where there's like 4 pulleys that are mounted to the ground, and they put the ropes in it so you're spread out nice and even, and the horses can't run in random directions and mess the whole thing up. Because they could all just run off in the same direction, and then you just get, so they make sure, you're really stuck between these 4 stock posts, and the horses run away, and you're going to get pulled in 4 separate directions.
Wouldn't you have like one person for each horse? Or would you have like one person like whip all the horses up?
Oh, I get what you're saying. Yeah, you do. But that doesn't
That-
make every horse, be
Because that would make
obedient.
like you have your
The
right arm
point
gone, and you
is,
have your left arm.
it's not how gruesome this is. I'm sorry. The point is, it's going to take a while. To go through each and every guy, hook them up in the same little mechanism, get the horses, line them
Oh,
up.
I thought there was
They
gonna be like a.
Can you stop
100
talking without
horse.
raising your hand? You're doing it again
Sorry.
and again and again and again and again. If you got something worth saying, you can raise your hand. It's totally cool. But just the interjecting thing, it gets us off track. The point is, it's going to take a while, and so they're not going to get everyone through all at once. So they come to Daniel. Here's what happens, verse 14. When Arioch, the commander of the king's guard, came to kill them, Daniel handled the situation with wisdom and discretion. He asked Arioch, why has the king issued such a harsh decree? Honestly, if someone showed up your door tomorrow, and they knocked on the door, you open the door, it's like a set of policemen, and they say, we're here because President Trump has decreed that all, and then they just describe you. They just describe you perfectly. I don't know, everyone with your color hair that's your age that lives in this block is all going to be killed by jumping out of a hot air balloon with no parachute.
So pretty much you.
Yeah, like, so you're coming with us. You're going to say why. You're not just going to put out your wrists and say, all right, cuff me, take me away.
I would do
Okay,
that.
let's do it.
I would. 'cause
Daniel asks why, but he's doing it delicately. He asked, why is the decree so harsh? Think about this. He's at home, he's done nothing wrong, and the decree is always wise men die.
Like, why?
That's harsh.
That's the reason
That's
why.
the point with my whole little Trump, everyone who looks like you example. The point was that you look like you. The point wasn't that you committed a crime. Does that make sense? That's the reality. Daniel hasn't done anything wrong.
What
A
if
lot of these wise men who are in training haven't done anything wrong. He's got 3 friends from Israel. They haven't done anything wrong. They have the same amount of training as him. They weren't there that night. This is harsh. This is too much. So Arioch told him all that had happened. Daniel went at once to see the king and requested more time to tell the king what the dream meant. Daniel, we'll find out time and time again throughout the book, is respected because he's smart, he's honest, and he loves God. And he does not waver in worshiping his God and his God alone. And because he's smart, and because he's honest, and because he does not waver, he has this one rock-solid lifestyle. People treat him different than other people. If the guy comes to your door, who's commanded by the king to kill all the wise men, and knows you die if you disobey the king, why would he let Daniel go see the king?
Because he trusts him.
That's the only thing that can be. Any other reason wouldn't fly. You just say, I don't want to die. He's like, tough luck, you're dying. Any other reason you give him, it's not going to work. But the fact is, Daniel, in 2 years, already has the trust of the captain of the guard. Already. That's pretty cool. 2 years of school, boom. He's already trusted by the yard duty.
That's a tough one.
All right, so here we go. Moving on in the story, verse 17. Then Daniel went home. Oh, whoops, I skipped a whole paragraph. Daniel went at once to see the king and requested more time to tell the king what the dream meant. And he doesn't say yes in the verse, but we find out, yeah, the king said yes. The king said yes. Another thing you don't find out in that verse is the king didn't just give Daniel more time. The king put a hold on all the executions. Every wise man got more time.
Oh my gosh.
That's crazy because even the wise men were like begging, and the king says, no, you're all dead. Daniel comes in and makes one request. The king says, okay. So this isn't just the captain of the guard. This is already the king. He's still in school. He's not even a full-fledged wise man. And the king's already like, okay, you can have more time because you're Daniel. It's amazing. I love this guy. Okay, so then he goes home. Verse 17. Then Daniel went home and told his friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, what had happened. Now, you might notice there's this trifecta of friends Daniel has, and their names flip back and forth. All four of these guys, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, are from Israel. Those are their Israelite, Judean, whatever you want to call it, Jewish names. Those are the names they were born with, okay? They have other names from Babylon. Daniel's called Belteshazzar. You know, great name, right? Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah are now Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
Like
those are the names they're more famous by. But that's not their real names. Those are their Babylonian names. Those are the names that are based on Babylonian gods. All four of them, they're Judean names. They're birth names. They honor God. Daniel's name means God is my judge. That means God watches over every one of my actions, and I have to make sure my actions are approved by him. That's the meaning of his name. And then he goes to Belteshazzar when he gets to Babylon, and that's like, Baal will protect me.
What is this garbage?
Baal's the guy who wants human sacrifice. I don't trust him to protect me.
You kill me, and I protect
That does
you.
not sound like a good idea. Do not
No.
let Baal protect you.
No.
He will not let you live. Okay,
He's
so
not even a thing.
anyways, my point is you'll see these three guys always mentioned in a set of three. You never really see them by themselves. And you'll see their names flip back and forth from this Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. Sometimes it'll be Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. It just goes back and forth. I think in the same chapter it flips back and forth. But they're the same three guys, just so you guys are aware. Verse 18. He urged them to ask the God of heaven to show them his mercy by telling them the secret, so they would not be executed along with the other wise men of Babylon. Notice right here, first off, they're concerned for their lives, and they're not as concerned yet for the lives of the other wise men. He says, pray to God so that we might not be killed with the other wise men. Daniel's assuming the other wise men are going to die. Interesting. Okay. Also notice that he urges them to pray, and that the secret we're talking about is what the dream even is. No one even knows what the dream is yet except for the king. Verse 19. That night the secret was revealed to Daniel in a vision. Then Daniel praised the God of heaven. He said, praise the name of God forever and ever, for he has all wisdom and power. He controls the course of world events. This, by the way, if you ever see this in your Bible, if you guys are looking, you see how the lines are kind of like indented funny? They're kind of bumped inward from the edge of the page. That means it's a poem or a song. One or the other. It's either set to music or it rhymes, or it has a poetic structure. Now, this is in Aramaic, and I don't know Aramaic poetry. If he's doing it like he learned as a kid, Hebrew poetry, they don't rhyme. That's not their structure. What they do is they do a 2-line pairing structure where they go and say the same thing in different words. So you say it one way, then you say it another way. And you do it using normal poetic language. So you might say, if it was like a romantic poem, you might say, your hair is so beautiful, your hair's beauty transfixes me. And so why it's a poem in Hebrew is because you said the same thing twice. You're talking about God, you might say, God, you are so strong no one can beat you. And then you might say, God, you are stronger than everyone else. You're like, but that's the same thing, Daniel. That's the point. That's what makes it poetry in Hebrew. You say the same thing different. Use different words, just repeat what you meant. That makes it Hebrew poetry. And occasionally, if you were a very good poet, you would break the 2-line structure and you do multiple lines, as many as you could think of, to say the same thing. And your poem would literally be 5, 6, 7 lines of the same thing on every line, but they're different words. You use a different set of synonyms. You use a different set of verbs. You use something different to change the way it goes, but you're saying the same thing over and over and over again. The reason why they consider this poetic is because in their minds, the more you dwell on something, the more you consider something, the more you discover its beauty. And so in their heads, if you're going to make a poem to God and really honor him, you're going to say a lot about one of his attributes. Just focus on that one thing and look at it from every angle. And that draws you closer to the beauty of God. It draws you closer to the glory of God. So check out his poem. I know there's no rhymes. I apologize. It's not written in English, so there's no chance of it rhyming anyways. It says, praise the name of God forever and ever, for he has all wisdom and power. He controls the course of world events. He removes kings and sets up other kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to the scholars. He reveals deep and mysterious things, and he knows what lies in hidden darkness, though he is surrounded by light. I thank and praise you, God of my ancestors, for you have given me wisdom and strength. You have told me what we asked of you, and have revealed to us what the king demanded. So if you're paying attention, most of those pairs are exactly the same thing. Look at the last one. You have told me what we asked of you. Okay. And revealed to us what the king demanded. Well, that's the same thing. What the king demanded is what they asked of God. So when they said, he told us what we asked of you, it's the same as... Yeah, it's the same thing. Okay. Anyways, then verse 24. Then Daniel went to see Arioch, whom the king had ordered to execute the wise men of Babylon. Daniel said to him, don't kill the wise men. Take me to the king, and I will tell him the meaning of his dream. So what's Daniel do right here? He's not just concerned about himself. Once he has the key to salvation, once he has the way to be saved, he wants to share it. As soon as he knows how not to die, as soon as he knows how to please the king, he says, please don't kill the other wise men. Does that make sense? When his life was at risk, yeah, maybe he was more concerned about himself. Once he had the way to not die, he wanted to share it with everyone. So sometimes selfish, sometimes generous. Sounds like a human to me. Verse 25, Arioch quickly took Daniel to the king and said, I have found the one of the captives from Judah who will tell the king the meaning of his dream. Anybody see what he just did there? What did he just do?
Did you say the same thing?
No, that's the poem stuff. Sorry, not that. Different.
Found it.
What did Arioch just do? Yeah?
He quickly.
He sort of bended his words so that it would sound better.
Yeah. He's taking credit for this. He says, I found the one who can tell you the meaning of the dream. What just happened, really, is Daniel figured out the meaning of the dream and then went and found Arioch. That's the opposite of the truth.
You shouldn't have gone to
Arioch lied. Arioch said, I found him. I found the one who can tell you the answer. Why would Arioch do this? Because in this kingdom, the only way to get ahead is to impress the king.
More credit.
Arioch doesn't know the meaning of the dream. He can't take credit for that. But Arioch can just say, I found him for you, king. Here you go. Here's the guy who can help you. And now Arioch gets the credit. Sounds like me?
Yeah.
Why would I do that?
Yeah, the same thing.
Because
Well, I did just act it out in front of you.
Exactly.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean I would actually do that. It's called acting.
Yeah.
what? That's
And
magic.
most
If
understand
if those were the same thing, then there'd be a lot more murders in Hollywood.
That's why.
Um,
Good.
All right. Anyways, all of my non-selfishness aside, if I can help it. Verse 26, the king said to Daniel, also known as Belteshazzar, is this true? Can you tell me what my dream was and what it means? Daniel replied, verse 27, there are no wise men, enchanters, magicians, or fortune tellers who can reveal the king's secret. And then they cut off his head.
Bye, Daniel.
I'm just kidding. If you guys are reading along, you know that's not what happened.
I know.
That's why the book is longer.
No, Daniel doesn't breathe. Daniel doesn't pause. Daniel doesn't sit there and let the king think about what he just said. He just plunges forward. And he says this in verse 28. But there is a God in heaven who reveals secrets, and he has shown King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen in the future. Now I will tell you your dream and the visions you saw as you lay on your bed. Now this is really cool. Notice he doesn't open with the answer. I mean, he wants to save his life. He wants to not die here, but he doesn't open with, here, King, here's your dream. What's the first thing he says? I'm not the one doing this. God's the one doing this. This isn't a human job. You gave it to humans. Humans can't do it, though. God's the one who can do it. And the interesting thing about this is that when you talk about God in these older languages, gods have names. Nowadays in America, we have this, old-fashioned kind of tradition where, like, if you write God with a lowercase g, then you're talking about, like, other people's gods. But that doesn't really make a lot of sense because a lot of our country isn't even a Christian culture anymore. And so it doesn't really make a lot of sense that, capitalizing the word God, that's a generic word. It means just someone who's divine, someone who's supernatural, someone who's beyond us. Just capitalizing it magically makes it about the God of the Bible. That's a little silly. And so back then they didn't do that. They had names. Gods had names. And so you might be thinking, well, wait a second, what's God's name? What's our God's name? What's the God of the Bible called?
There's
actually-
Yahweh.
He actually has multiple names. His names he always gives out in different situations to describe his relationship with you. So whenever you're meeting with God, whenever you're talking with God, he doesn't just say, yeah, I'm God. He tells you who he is to you. He gives you a name that's particular to your relationship with him. You guys might actually have experienced this with humans. Does anyone here have a brother, sister, family member that you call by like even half their name? You trim off a bunch of their name? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, so like my name's Daniel. I don't know if you guys caught on to that.
Dan.
If you call me Dan, I flat out won't answer because my name isn't Dan. It's Daniel. But my family
Danny.
can call me Dan. And I'll be like, yeah? You call me Danny? I don't know who you're talking to. I think there's someone else in the room with the name Danny. I will not answer to you. I'm not doing it out of rudeness. I'm not doing it because I don't like being called Danny. I'm doing it because my name isn't Danny. But if my mom calls me Danny, if my dad calls me Danny boy, I answer.
Bean juice.
Because within my relationship with them, that name works. If I don't have a relationship with you where you call me Dan, I don't know you're talking to me. Because that's not the name you and I have for me. Does that kind of make sense?
I'll answer.
So with God, he's picked out names. He knows what they mean. He invented what they mean. And he has these special names. So when Daniel says there's a God in heaven, he's not just like, little g, there's some other divine being you don't know about.
There's a big G.
He names God.
Little G, there's another big G.
And he says, basically, guys, my God that you don't worship, that you don't know about, that you don't believe in, my God from back in Israel, from back in Judah, my God that is with me no matter where I go, he's the one who can reveal secrets. Think about the implication of this, because all the other guys who were in here a little while ago failed. And they all worship other gods. They all worship the Babylonian gods. They all worship the gods that the king worships. So Daniel does not open with, hey king, I got what you want. Daniel opens with, my God's real, your gods are fake.
Happy birthday.
He opens with giving God credit, but he opens with giving God credit in front of the guy who could kill him for giving God credit.
But he doesn't.
But think about the courage to do it. Now, honestly, he's also just being wise. He's being smart. You always start with the bad news. If you have both, start with the bad news because then you end on the good news, right? That's better.
Yeah.
You make him feel better by the end of it. He knows he's got the truth. He knows he's got the dream. And so he starts with the offensive part. I'm sorry to say, King, my God is real. He has real power. All the other guys' gods don't. So here's what my God told me. And then he gets it right. And so he proves his statement. It's not like he's just going there to insult the king. He actually knows what the dream is.
Your God's fake. Well, bye-bye.
Oh yeah, so this is Daniel's life. That little red line is where the story takes place. So it's right at the beginning of Daniel's life. He's a pretty old guy by the time he dies.
What if his
Anyways,
What
I
if
forgot to
it's
change slides. My bad.
what if
Alright.
hold on. What if the king's dream was about Daniel insulting him?
That'd be weird, but it's not.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
so
know.
let's see what it is. Verse 29. While your majesty was sleeping, you dreamed about coming events. Now, another translation of this verse, because it's Aramaic, it's a little fuzzy, could also be, while you were lying down to sleep, you thought about future events. And I like that translation a smidge better because it explains why he had this dream. Not explaining that he had this dream. We already know he had the dream. But it would explain why he had the dream. Check it out. Pair it up with the second half of this paragraph here. Where did I leave off? Oh, verse 29, sorry. While you were sleeping, you dreamed about coming events. He who reveals secrets has shown you what is going to happen. And it is not because I'm wiser than anyone else that I know the secret of your dream, but because God wants you to understand what was in your heart. So this is the cool part. Nebuchadnezzar's original assumption that someone gave him the dream was correct. And God, the real God that actually exists, is the one who did it. Because, no duh, if the other guys don't exist, they can't give you a dream. And that's just logic. Get real. So yeah, God in heaven gave this unbelieving, pagan, country-destroying king a dream that actually tells the future. Why would God do this? Because God is looking down on earth and he's watching every single person and he sees this king that is living an entirely selfish life suddenly have a non-selfish thought.
What?
The king thinks one night as he's lying down to bed,
Just like Joseph.
I wonder what happens after me. Like when I die and I'm gone, I wonder what comes next. I wonder who will be the next king? What will be the next empire? What will come when I'm out of here? And God's like, whoa, good job, man. You actually thought something non-selfish. Reward time. And so God actually gives him the answer in the form of a dream. God doesn't just like give him the straight answer because then Nebuchadnezzar might not know how he got the answer. God is giving him an answer he needs Daniel to unlock. So that in the process of getting the answer, he's actually going to get to learn something about God. God's pretty cool like that. He can set up whole situations where the person is drawn closer to him by their own free will. It's really cool. Really cool.
How it works.
Yeah, it's amazing. All right, so verse 31, here we go. Here's the actual vision. We finally get it. In your vision, your majesty, you saw standing before you a huge, shining statue of a man. It was a frightening sight. The head... Oh, I lost my spot. The head of the statue was made of fine gold. Its chest and arms were silver. Its belly and thighs were bronze. Its legs were iron, and its feet were a combination of iron and baked clay. As you watched, a rock was cut from a mountain, but not by human hands. It struck the feet of iron and clay, smashing them to bits. The whole statue was crushed into small pieces of iron, clay, bronze, silver, and gold. Then the wind blew them away without a trace, like chaff on a threshing floor. But the rock that knocked the statue down became a great mountain that covered the whole earth. That was the dream. Now we will tell the king what it means. Your majesty, you are the greatest of kings. The God of heaven has given you sovereignty, power, strength, and honor. He has made you the ruler over all the inhabited world, and has put even the wild animals and birds under your control. You are the head of gold. And he's not just making this up to make the king feel better. This is actually true.
That's what I thought when I first.
And it's
Is that what he looks
interesting. Huh?
Is that what, like,
It's just an artist rendition. There's no
What-
pictures in
what is
Daniel's
it only,
original
like,
book.
you know, half of a picture?
We'll get there. Hold your horses.
There's something with the other hand.
Oh, it actually has something to do with
I
the...
can't
Oh, I thought it was
hold
just
on
a
to
picture.
Oh, no,
probably
it's just a
the rock.
picture. It's for the PowerPoint slideshow purposes. It's half a picture.
Oh,
But
okay.
you're not on that slide yet, so you'll have to wait and see. Anyway, so there's your statue. We got gold, we got silver, we got bronze, we got iron, and then the iron like gives way to clay iron mixture. And we find out as we read through the explanation of what the vision is, the clay iron is part of the iron. They share a meaning. It's not like the iron's one thing and the clay iron mixture is another thing. It's not like
I
there's
know what I
5 parts to the statue. There's only 4 parts to the statue. And this is a timeline. So we got now, a little bit in the future, further in the future, more in the future, and then the end of that thing in the future.
The end of the world.
Interesting, right?
Revelations.
Not
I know what it is.
quite, but sort of. I
Like
hate
the
to go down
beginning.
that road because that would take way too long.
I know what it
But
is.
for today's purposes, no.
Don't.
However, there is some crossover. There's some parallels. Okay, so anyways,
Like right now.
no. Well, okay, let me explain. The timeline doesn't come to the present in the way we would think of,
Babylon.
but it does come up to the present. The rock smashing part, where it says it will cover the whole earth, that kingdom never ends. So that part of the dream comes up to the present, but the statue gets obliterated. That's already happened. So that's all in the past. The whole statue's in the past. So the statue is a timeline that stretches from Nebuchadnezzar to our past. But the rock that comes after it, that's still here. We'll explain. Okay, just go through me piece by piece. You'll see.
Okay. I kind of get it.
Okay, so verse 39. But after your kingdom comes to an end, another kingdom. Oh wait, we didn't actually look at this slide. Okay, sorry. So yeah, Gold Kingdom. Here we go. This is Babylonian Empire. This is the Middle East. Here we go. This is Tehran over here. Here's Israel over there. This is like the top of Egypt over here, the very, very top of Africa, just peeking up. If you go further in this direction, you get into Asia. You get into India, China, those areas. You go up here, that's Russia. Go that way, that's Europe. Okay, but this is remember in the way past, those portions of the world, Russia, Europe, Africa, Asia, they weren't well settled. They were sparsely populated. And so most of the world's population was centered here in the Middle East even still. Yeah.
Is like that shape almost looks like a head.
Mhm.
Is that why it meant like
No.
okay, but I'm like, is that just like
It's just random.
They didn't have
It's like
aerial
because
photos.
that shape
Yeah,
looks
they didn't
like
have
a head.
aerial photos back then, so they probably couldn't have gotten it this accurate even back then. This is all using Google Earth,
Is
satellite
it
imagery.
gold because it's like
Oh, I thought
the most of the
gold was
population was there and then it got
No.
like
So the
silver
gold
because
thing's
it's
interesting. This is really odd because you might think like he has like the biggest military out of
Oh,
all
'cause
the
he's
parts
the
of the
most
statue,
people.
or you think he has the biggest population out of all the parts of the statue, or you think he has the most land out of all the parts of the statue. None of those are true though.
What?
Every part of the statue that comes after him, the silver part, the bronze part, the iron part, they're all bigger.
What?
They all have bigger armies. They all have more people. More land, more people, more armies. So he's the smallest of the small on the statue. But the reason why he's gold and he's up top is because as far as kingly rule is concerned, no one will ever surpass him. The fact that he can say something and it's done or you die. The fact that the law is what he says. The fact that no one can contradict him. No one can counteract one of his laws. He is 100% in charge. There's no Senate. There's no Congress. His wise men can't argue with him. They just have to offer suggestions. No one will ever be like this ever again. Even in the very next kingdom, which exists during Daniel's time, he lives into the next kingdom. He lives to see the fall of Babylon and the rise of the Medo-Persian Empire. That's the next one.
The Persians.
The Medes and the Persians. But yes, eventually just the Persians as the Medes kind of meld into and become more Persian.
So does that
He sees that kingdom come, and we find out from his book that in the Medo-Persian Empire, the king is not the top. The law is the top, and the king is second to the law.
Oh, that's
And if the king breaks the law, he gets punished. And if the king writes a law, he has to obey it. So the king is not the top dog. Then you get into the next one, and it's a little bit worse, and you get into the next one, it's a little bit worse. And so the goldness, the silverness, the copper or bronzeness, the ironness, that doesn't have to do with size or might or any of those things. It has to do with how much power you, the individual king, have. What kind of ruler are you? Are you an absolute, perfect, hyper monarchy? Or maybe a little less of a monarchy? Maybe a little more of a quasi-monarchy with a bit of a senate thrown in. So anyways, we'll keep pouring through the timeline here. He says, but after your kingdom comes to an end, another kingdom inferior to yours will rise to take your place. After that kingdom has fallen, yet a third kingdom, represented by bronze, will rise to rule the world. So we have our next two kingdoms, and they're not named. So you might be asking, how do we know that the second kingdom that's silver is the Medo-Persian Empire? How do we know that? Or, how do we know that Daniel didn't just write his book later after all this stuff happened? How do we know that we aren't just taking his vague prophecy and making it be about the Medo-Persian Empire? These are the kinds of questions that skeptics ask, and they're good questions to ask. It's fantastic to check your Bible. It's fantastic. Why? Because everyone's already checked it and it's never been wrong. So when you go to check it, you know what you'll find is not like, oh no, Daniel probably wrote his book late, oh no. You'll find out, nope, actually there's verifiable archaeological evidence to suggest he had to have been in the Babylonian throne room or else he couldn't have written this book. There's a factoid in this book that is forgotten by the Medo-Persians. It's forgotten by the next empire, and there was no empires really after that. But it's forgotten for thousands of years until we dig it up. And so for that 1,000-year block between the actual Babylonian throne room and us digging up that fact, no one could have written the book of Daniel. You had to have written the book in the Babylonian throne room. It's the only way you could have written the book. And that little factoid, in case you're curious, is that the last king of the Babylonian Empire had his son sit on the throne while he went out of town. That's it. Sit on the throne while he's out of town, and he gets to be pretend king for a while. And while he's on the throne as the pretend king for a while his dad's out of town, that's when the Medo-Persians come and conquer the country, destroy everything, and lose any record of the fact that this guy actually ruled the capital city for months. Months he ruled the capital city. Daniel keeps record of it, but no one else does. It's completely lost to time until we dig up Babylonian records that state that the king went out of town and he left his son to rule in his stead. And so for thousands of years, people thought Daniel was probably a fake book. It was probably written after all these prophecies came true, and they just wrote it backwards and then pretended they were from Babylon. They thought the whole book was fake because it got that fact wrong in their eyes. For thousands of years, we never found any evidence of that guy ever sitting on the throne. And so they just thought someone made up the book and they got something wrong. And then we found out later, oh yeah, he actually did sit on the throne. That means the book's real. That means the book was actually written that far back in time. That means the prophecies are accurate, and they were actually given hundreds of years before the things actually occurred. That's pretty cool.
It's kind of weird.
It's really cool.
It's
There's
like-
lots of times where people thought the Bible was
confusing.
absolutely wrong. They looked at the Bible and go, oh, that's so wrong.
It's so
One of
fake.
those
Jesus wasn't
is
God.
in the Gospels. We get several mentions of the governor of Judah named Pilate. Well, for hundreds of years, we had no archaeological evidence to suggest that Pilate was even a real person, that he ever even existed. And the Romans kept good records, so that's pretty weird. We dig up a lot of Roman stuff, and
Probably destroyed the
there's all kinds of reasons you can come up with, but we know the names of almost every other governor in almost every other province. We know a lot about the Roman era because they kept such good records.
Jesus?
So we thought, you know what? Maybe there's this chance. Maybe the Bible was made up. Maybe they just invented this guy Pilate. Then we dig up the foundation stone of a building, and it actually says the building was dedicated to the governor of
Pontius
the time, Pontius Pilate. It's carved into the foundation of the building.
So no, they put it there to make you believe. No,
So
that
yeah,
was
it
for a
turns out the
movie.
Bible was true
It was for a
all
movie.
along.
It was
We just hadn't dug deep enough.
It was obviously for a movie.
No.
Obviously.
Ancient stones. Ancient stones. Okay, so real quick, how do we know it's the Medo-Persians? How do we know what kingdom we're talking about? Flip with me,
'Cause he
forward in the
told
book,
you
go to
this.
Daniel chapter 8. This is one of my favorite things about Daniel, is that Daniel gets prophecy sometimes for the sake of others, and sometimes for him. It's just for him. It's like that one, that's the king's dream, it's for the king. The whole dream's bent around how the king sees the world. This dream is from God for Daniel. Daniel sees this whole series of crazy weird events, and then Daniel goes like, what did I just see? And an angel comes down and says, hey Daniel, let me explain it to you. I know it was weird, let me break it down. So here we go, we're going to just read a small section right here, verses 20 through 22 of chapter 8. And this is the angel breaking it down for Daniel, just saying, okay, remember those weird, crazy animals you saw? Let me explain. Basically, Daniel has a similar dream to the king's original dream. It's 4 periods of history, characterized by 4 different things. But in Daniel's dream, because it's God's perspective, not the king's perspective, it's 4 ravenous, wild beasts. Because that's how God sees these earthly kingdoms. Man sees them as these amazing pillars, handcrafted and beautiful. God looks at them and goes,
Donald Trump.
ew, you guys are gross. You just crush things and take things and destroy things. It's like a beast on a rampage. And so this is what God tells Daniel through the angel. Verse 20 through 22. The 2-horned ram represents the kings of Media and Persia. The shaggy male goat represents the king of Greece. And the large horn between his eyes represents the first king of the Greek Empire. basically stating that the first king of the Greek Empire will be the great king. And everyone after that in the Greek Empire will just be kind of like, eh.
Who was the first? Wait, wasn't it like?
Alexander the Great.
Wait, what? Really?
Yeah, keep reading chapter 8, and it actually tells you how the Greek Empire falls. That after the first king dies,
Right?
no, that's Rome, and that doesn't actually fall permanently.
Oh, so
But-
you're talking about Greece.
Yeah, Greece before Rome. So Greece, after Alexander the Great dies, Daniel actually predicts that when the first king dies, the empire gets split into 4 pieces, and the 4 top generals get to take a piece. That's prophesied in Daniel chapter 8, 200 years before Alexander the Great even is born.
Dang,
That's pretty good.
And names.
You not only give the name of the country, but you describe how it rises and falls.
And that's not even like a big prophecy. Jesus was a big prophecy.
Yeah, you
And
know,
I told
one
you
of
how he
Daniel's
died
jobs
today.
we'll get to. Oh my gosh, so cool. He gets to read something to the king of the Persians. And it's got the king of the Persians' name in it. And it was written hundreds of years before by Isaiah. It's pretty cool.
What?
It's pretty cool. All right, so here's the next empire. This is the Greco-Macedonian Empire. We like to call it that now. Historians are kind of changing it from the Greek Empire to Greco-Macedonian. Why? Alexander the Great was Macedonian. He wasn't Greek.
Yeah.
So we've been calling it the Greek Empire, and that's kind of mean. It's a Greek culture, but the guy who set up the empire was Macedonian. So, you know, give him some credit.
It's not even the Mediterranean.
So what happened was the last one, we'll go back a slide, Silver Empire, they got up here close to Macedonia and Greece. They tried to press in, and then Alexander the Great's like, what the heck? Get out of my country. I don't like you guys.
No,
And
get
so
out.
he pushes back, and he conquers all of their empire, and then extra. He goes past their empire, goes all the way up to the Himalayas. You guys might know the end of that story. But anyways, Babylon, I keep pointing out on the map here so you can see like where the center was, the old
Babylonians
map to
has
the new
been
map.
captured like all this time. It's always been.
Alexander the Great makes it his capital city,
Uh,
even though he's from Macedonia.
Wait. But was it like the capital city for the other group?
No, yeah, for silver too. It was the capital for Babylon, the capital for
That's
the
what it meant by the
Medo-Persians.
That's what it meant by the
Yep.
tower.
Eventually, it's the capital for the Greco-Macedonian Empire. When Alexander the Great decides to quit conquering, he's done. He goes back and makes his empire in
So-
Babylon. It's just a really big, fancy
So
city.
that's what it
Everyone
means.
liked it.
Like so, Babylon has been the capital
All three.
since.
All 3. Now the 4th it'll change. We'll see in the 4th it
It won't
changes,
be.
and we'll see why. Check it out. Read with me verses 40 through 43. We're back in chapter 2. Sorry for dodging around on you guys. So flip back to chapter 2 if you were still in chapter 8. Chapter 2, pick up verse 40. We're going to read 40 through 43. We find out about the 4th empire. Following that kingdom, there will be a 4th one as strong as iron. That kingdom will smash and crush all previous empires, just as iron smashes and crushes everything it strikes. At this point in history, iron is the strongest metal they have. So
Like the Romans.
eventually they'll create stronger metals. But for now, this is the best they got. So, yeah, you already guessed it. It might be the Romans. Verse 41. The feet and toes you saw were a combination of iron and baked clay, showing that this kingdom will be divided. Like iron mixed with clay, it will have some of the strength of iron. But while some parts of it will be as strong as iron, other parts will be as weak as clay. This mixture of iron and clay also shows that these kingdoms will try to strengthen themselves by forming alliances with each other through intermarriage. But they will not hold together, just as iron and clay do not mix. Yikesa. So here's the deal. We get to that 4th kingdom, it's Rome, and it is bigger than all the rest. This little portion over here is how big all the previous empires ever got. That's the biggest they ever got.
And Rome
The
was
Roman
the
Empire
capital.
conquers the whole northern coastline of Africa. They wanted the whole Mediterranean for themselves.
They even got a little island over there.
Oh yeah, they got islands and all kinds of stuff. And they get this whole section of Europe, and they even get over into Britannia. Not a total success in
So
Britannia,
was-
but they did control it for a time. So, all this Roman Empire, iron, strong, yeah!
Was it Caesar?
But it doesn't cut cleanly from one metal to the next metal at the end of the Roman Empire. The other metals, they just transition. Gold to silver, silver to bronze, bronze to iron, clean cut, clean cut, clean cut. Whole empire knocked over, taken over. That's not how Rome falls. If you guys have learned your history well, you
Of
know
course.
Rome falls a little bit here, a little bit there. Excuse me. An army goes down, a province goes down, the west splits from the east. There's all these little falling apart
That's why the clay, right?
crumblings that happen. And eventually, all the little cultures they tried to make one culture, they just going back to being their own cultures again. They just go back. Spaniards are Spaniards, and French are French, and so on and so on and so on. So that is the clay crumbling. But then it gets to the most exciting part of this whole deal. Oh yeah, just by the way, here's your little breakdown in case you were curious. I have a really hard time with this, trying to figure out how long these date stretches are, which kingdom was the longest running kingdom, what does this overlap with in history? I struggle with that, so I like graphics. I much prefer graphics. Here we go. This is Daniel. This is the length of his book. I misspoke earlier. I said it was his lifespan. That's not true. The book starts at age 15. So he starts 15 years before that line. This is just how long his book lasts for in history. So here we go. Zoom on out. You got the Babylonian Empire, the gold. Pretty short time span, about 100 years. And then you get to the Medo-Persian Empire, 539 to 330, so that's about 200 years. Then you get to the Greco-Macedonian Empire, that's from 330 to 63, so that's almost 400 years. You're just real close to 400 years. Then you get to the Roman Empire.
Everything happens.
Holy cow, that's over 500 years. Over 500 years, that's a big long time. And then what we've got here is the end of the Old Testament, as far as when those books were written, about 430 on the last one, this tiny, tiny little Malachi you can't even read. And then you've got the New Testament right here. And you see Matthew and Luke starting out with the birth of Christ. It's kind of where the New Testament picks up, is just before the birth of Christ and his cousin John the Baptist. So this is your New Testament. And then the Roman Empire goes way past that. It goes right on past the New Testament.
There's nothing.
Well, no empires.
No,
Not
I mean,
like
no more
these.
books.
No more books, that's correct, that too.
Wait, so after what is that little orange one?
Revelation. It's the last one.
So
written.
past Revelation.
90 AD, just for your information.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know. But
Yeah.
anyway, but past that, nothing happened.
In the
on the
Bible, the
Christians, there's no
Bible
more
stops getting written at that point.
But correct me if I'm wrong. There's actually more books being written. They just didn't put them into the Bible.
Mm-hmm. So the difference between a Bible book and a book, great question, good thing to know, is that when God wants something to go in the Bible, he actually gives you the words to write. He tells you what he wants written. He allows you to form it. Your brain still gets to process. It's not like you turn into a magic robot and just start... It's not like that. But God actually puts the words to you, and then you put the words to the paper, and you get to use your own style, your own influence, your own poetic nature, your own vocabulary. Your way of writing is what goes down onto the page. Then we've got tons of books. You're right. The book pace picks up. Why? Because there's more Christians. Therefore, more people to write the books. So there is more books getting written after this, but they're not necessarily an inspired by God, here's what I want you to write kind of book. They're just good books. Lots of them are great, but if it's not straight from God, then we can't say it's perfect. And so whenever you read Christian books from this point on, you always have to check it against the stuff God said and say, is it perfect? Or is it only like right in this chapter and that chapter is kind of weird? So you always have to check the stuff that comes after Revelation. And it's not just a time thing. There were books before Revelation that weren't put in the Bible because they didn't come straight from God. So there's a lot of sifting, a lot of careful choosing we have to do to figure out which ones actually deserve to be in the Bible. All right, so there's your timeline, kind of shows you. Basically, Daniel's lifespan is way back here. He was alive during the end of the Babylonian and the beginning of the Medo-Persian, but he accurately predicts not only the timing, the order, but also details about the Greco-Macedonian Empire and the Roman Empire. This is my favorite thing, though. If this was all fake, if Daniel's just making up stuff, then he would give the most details about these empires, because they're the ones he was alive for. But that's not the way the book goes. The book has very little detail about these empires. It just mentions them. Yeah, there's this one. Yeah, there's that one. The one with all the detail is these empires.
The one he wasn't alive for.
The ones he wasn't alive for. That shows you that this was not from Daniel's brain, from Daniel's mouth, from
You
Daniel's
wouldn't know
pen.
that.
This is from God. God's giving him this information.
You couldn't know the future
Mm-hmm.
unless
Unless you're God, unless he tells you. All right, so then we'll keep on reading. Read verses 44 through 45. We're almost done. During the reigns of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed or conquered. It will crush all these kingdoms into nothingness, and it will stand forever. That is the meaning of the rock cut from the mountain, though not by human hands, that crushed to pieces the statue of iron, bronze, clay, silver, and gold. The great God was showing the king what will happen in the future. The dream is true, and its meaning is certain. It's really cool. Do you guys catch the meaning of that rock cut from the mountain without hands? It's something that isn't necessarily pretty. It's not carved out like a statue. That's why that whole without hands thing. A statue's carved by hands. It's built by humans. A rock exists. Humans don't have to make rocks. They're just there. Now this thing is a small piece of a large thing, and it comes in at the end of the iron legs, down at the feet portion, and the whole statue disappears. Now remember, the statue is not a kingdom. The statue is the system of man-made kingdoms. Each piece is a kingdom. So the statue gets destroyed, and the timing is at the end of the iron. But it's not like the iron failed. It's not like the bronze failed. It's that all of them failed. They all were crushed by the rock. So now let's unravel this. Daniel doesn't give you the meaning of that last one in its entirety. He just gives you little hints. He says it's a kingdom. It's going to be set up not by humans. Did you catch that? It's not by hands. It's carved. The statue's carved by hands. It's set up by humans. The rock's not carved by hands. It's not set up by humans. It's a non-human kingdom that's going to last forever. It's going to be at first a small piece of the big thing, of the mountain, but eventually will grow and cover the whole earth. Anyone know what we're talking about yet?
No.
Animal kingdom, really.
The animal kingdom? No.
Cookies?
Not cookies. Cookies crumble. This
oh,
one
no.
crumbles other things.
Oh, I know. Think I got it. So we're talking about the span of like the different empires that are gonna happen after the Babylonian Empire, as the prophecy through King Nebuchadnezzar's dream.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds a little confusing, but like.
But what was the answer to the question? Because you said just a bunch of true stuff. But the question was, what is the stone cut without hands? What is that
the
kingdom?
stone is heaven, but no, the stone is God making his empire, which is heaven coming down to earth, and that crushes the rest of the empires, and God's going to recreate the earth in his own image.
You are so stinking close it hurts, but you're missing one crucial thing. The timing. You're just missing the timing.
Revelation.
Everything was right. Okay, but check it out. The statue crumbles at the iron phase of the statue. That's what the vision says.
Oh yeah, because it already crumbled.
It already crumbled. So when did this whole God kingdom start?
It started when Roman Empire fell.
All right, let's go back.
I think.
But Roman
Here's the
Empire-
deal. Remember, there's clay mixed into the iron.
Either that
There's
or when
crumbles
Jesus
mixed
was
into the
born.
iron. And the kingdom is God's kingdom. He establishes it here with Jesus during the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire falls apart, never to be replaced by another one world empire. And the kingdom of Christianity continues on and on and on.
That's when it
And it
started.
starts out as
Roman
a
fell.
small rock cut from the mountain, but eventually grows to cover the whole earth.
So when
How
Christianity.
cool is that?
So when the kingdom of Christianity started, the Roman Empire started to fall.
Correct. It did.
Okay.
And remember, the vision here is not about necessarily your military might or your number of people, your population. It's all about your kingly control, and that's true. After Nero, during the first era of Christianity, the emperor was checked very carefully by the Senate, and he did not get to be in full power anymore. Because Nero was a nut job, and no one trusted the emperor to have full power
Who's
anymore.
Nero?
He was the guy who lit Rome on fire and then blamed the Christians for it.
Oh yeah, that dude.
He was
Look
pretty
at you,
crazy.
dude.
He liked to do a lot of other crazy things that are unsavory to even think about. But anyways, so after all this, then yeah, we get the Christian kingdom. But it's not called that. That's just what it ends up being. By God, it's called the kingdom of God. That's what it's called. The kingdom of God.
That's why he said
And so it
kingdom of
starts
God.
with Jesus. We're here building the kingdom. We're here trying to lead people to God. And then one day, that's where you were 100% right, he's going to come back. And that's when the kingdom's really going to start to grow. And you're going to see its influence. It'll be undeniable because Jesus will be here.
And all the non-Christians will die.
Well,
We'll go to hell.
we're not hoping they'll die. We're hoping they'll choose God instead.
Yeah,
Once
if they
he's
don't.
here in front of them, we're hoping that they'll make that right choice. At
But
that
if they
point.
don't, then.
That's just justice, though. We all deserve that, not just a non-Christian. I deserve that, even as a Christian. All right, so here's the two
Whoa,
visions
that
just
looks
lit up
pretty
for you
cool.
guys, side by side. This is how mankind sees the kingdoms of mankind. It's a
That looks
beautiful,
pretty cool.
well-carved statue. This is how God sees the kingdoms of mankind. Kind of creepy, kind of gross.
What
They're
the
just,
heck even is
they're
that
all
thing?
bounding around, just smashing stuff, taking whatever they can take. And that's
What the heck
that's
is
how
that
God saw
thing?
them. Huh?
What the heck is that?
Some of them are just made up because they're just described by how they look. Not all of them were described as
But
real
why
animals.
is it on his head?
Just a bunch of horns.
But why?
Because it actually numbers how many horns he had. They sit there and count.
Why didn't it come out from like out of his body? So
It has to do with how many emperors Rome went through. They just went through emperor after emperor after emperor after emperor.
Wasn't
after
Caesar
emperor.
like the first?
No, I
That's
don't think so.
supposed to mean
That's a title.
You die fast.
Caesar's like pharaoh.
But like,
Does that not make sense? So it's like emperor, king, Caesar. They're just words that mean you're in charge. Caesar's not a name.
wait, wasn't? Wait,
Go look it up later. There's a whole list
Wait.
of Caesars. Caesar this, Caesar that, Caesar the other guy.
There's
a ton of them.
What the main one? Wait,
The main one.
the one from Rome. What is his name?
They're all from Rome. It's the Roman Empire.
Caesar. Wait, what was this guy?
Julius Caesar.
You mean Little
Julius
Caesar?
Caesar.
He's just famous because of Shakespeare. He's not like any more impressive than the other Caesars.
I know, but he sounds cool.
Oh, all right. Let's read the end of the
And
story.
he had a
here.
cool hat. Oh.
Read with me the end of the chapter, 46 to the end.
Need a
Then
salad.
King Nebuchadnezzar threw himself down before Daniel and worshipped him, and he commanded his people to offer sacrifices and burn sweet incense before him. The king said to Daniel, "Truly, your God is the greatest of the gods, the Lord over kings, a revealer of mysteries, for you have been able to reveal this secret." Then the king appointed Daniel to a high position and gave him many valuable gifts. Skipped a line. Where'd it go? Gifts. He made Daniel ruler over the whole province of Babylon, as well as chief over all his wise men. At Daniel's request, the king appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to be in charge of all the affairs in the province of Babylon. Well, Daniel remained in the king's court. So there we go, the ending. Apparently he got the dream right. You gotta love that reception. It's not just like the king says, "Oh, good job, you guessed it." He just like hits the floor. Have you guys ever been so impressed if someone said, "I'm floored"? No?
I didn't know
You guys
you
know-
like to
That's
talk
where that
about.
comes from. That's the idea. The king is so impressed he just immediately bows down. He's
Oh,
floored. That's how impressed he is by Daniel. And this just
He's
goes on.
amazed.
Daniel continues this trend. But Daniel started with something oh so important. So let's check out the meaning here. What's the point of all this for us? God Almighty knows all. No exceptions. And even when something seems impossible, if it's God's will, then we know it can be done by his power. If God says, "Hey, I gave a guy a dream. Can you tell him what it was?" You don't have to be like, "Oh, but God, I can't. I don't know what the dream was." You just go to God and say, "God, well, if this is what you want done, I know you have the power to get it done. Help me. I know you have the power. No matter what no matter what job God gives you." Too many J's and G's in the same phrase. Second thing we learned from this is that we should never forget to give God the glory when he decides to use us in part of his plan. Real deal. If someone goes to pat you on the back, someone goes to say, "Great job, you did amazing at that. You are so good."
Thank you.
God is good.
Proper response.
God is good.
God is good.
God is
Yeah,
better.
or, "Isn't God amazing?" Or, "Yeah, I'm so glad God decided to use me in this."
Hot God's better than
Anything you can say to give God the glory. And you know what? Yeah, you're going to get looked at pretty weird. People are going to be like, "What is wrong with you?" Because that's not normal anymore.
Didn't you do that?
I kind of watched you do it. Wasn't it you? And you're like, "No, God. You
There is
gave me
no
the
God
talent.
thingy.
God gave me the talent. God gave me the strength. God gave me the ability.
The
God
time.
gave me the time, the perseverance."
My life.
Is God. You give him the credit. And look what happens. Daniel could have taken all the credit, and the pagan evil king could have stayed a pagan evil king. But this is step one in 3 humongous things God's going to do in Nebuchadnezzar's life to actually convert him into a true believer. Now, you might think from today's story, Nebuchadnezzar is just going to be a believer in God from this point on.
No.
I mean, he basically said, God is the most, Daniel's God is the most amazing of all the gods. But we will see as the chapters go on, as the weeks go on, Nebuchadnezzar does not have a changed heart yet. It is going to take far more than a miracle of telling you what your dream is and telling you the future.
But does he?
Far more. Eventually. But it
What
takes
was
a
that?
lot. A lot. And it's like, I wouldn't even want to go through it. I'd just be like, God, I believe in you. Just please don't do these things. It gets bad towards the end because Nebuchadnezzar's stubborn. He's way stubborn. All right.
Pharaoh.
We're done. Let's pray. But don't forget these 2 lessons. God has all the power. If he has something he wants you to do, he'll make sure you can do it. And give him the glory when something actually goes his way. Lord, we thank you for the book of Daniel. We thank you for the example that Daniel is for us. And we just ask that we would be growing in all the ways you've already strengthened him. He was so smart, so wise. He was so honest, never hiding anything, never covering up the truth. And Lord, he loved you in an unwavering way. He away from you. He never turned away from you. He never thought, well, maybe it's just easier if I go along with what they're doing. Lord, we need to follow that kind of example. And so I just ask you'd grow us. You'd help us to become wise from studying your word, from listening to what you tell us. You'd help us to become honest by realizing that we have nothing to gain from lying. We're only delaying the inevitable. And Lord, may we learn that life lesson that staying close to you is the absolute best thing we can possibly do in every situation, no matter how inconvenient it can be sometimes. Staying close to you is the best thing we can have. We just ask, Lord, that you would strengthen each and every one of us in all those ways. You would draw us close to you, and you'd help us to give you the credit in our lives. We ask for all that in your name. Amen. I love you guys. Time to go. But
Bucket.
just have one quick announcement. What? No.
What?
You can't drop it the last second. You gotta put your phone in the beginning. Alright, one quick announcement. We are needing some drivers still for camp. I am literally one seatbelt short on Monday. Just one.
By the way,
and
I'm
then
not
Saturday, I did know that.
Okay.
Saturday, I'm still several seatbelts short. So talk to your parents, say, hey, you're free on Saturday, Daniel needs you. Or hey, you're free on Monday, Daniel needs you. Just have them call me, email me, call the church if they have to.
Yes, I win. Ha.
You had two in there the whole time anyways?
I have two. Yes.
You didn't need to add the other one.
I know.
Yes.
I win.
Yes, you did.
First time. Oh yeah.
Please be here Monday. I sent out a ton
Daniel.
of emails.
Daniel,
Did
this
you
is
guys not get the emails?
Daniel. This is important. My dad is bringing the basketball thing today.
Oh, really?
It's here right now.
Where? Downstairs? Upstairs?
Yeah,
Oh, nice.
right there.
There you go. Okay. I thought I needed to go help him carry it right now the way you said that.
No way, are you kidding?
I didn't know if it was already set up.
Nope.
Those things are really unwieldy.
I'll leave that up to you guys.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we usually use it.
Oh yeah?
My mom, I really want to come here.
You actually had the scholarship.
Because
Yes.
if I'm
Yeah, I need to take some time today to sit there and call everyone because not everybody emails back. So.
yeah, not.
Get on it. Tell your check your spam or whatever.
It's
Because
kind of hard.
the email in there has the packing list.
Daniel.
Oh, yeah, three things.
She does have a packing list.
Oh, good. Because yeah, it's supposed to be
I know
something
what
you
you
guys could
do.
afford to have.
I'm trying to get
You
that
get to
all
keep
to
the packing
list.
list.
Okay.
What would you like, sir? Anything that's $1.
You have a phone box?
Actually, no. I got what you're supposed to. You're in a race.
Those are $60 for the next circuit. They're running kind of low. I haven't scheduled it yet. There's a girls one actually scheduled and summer, like late August. I think. That's a serious cut.
Is that Ben?
They only need it for other things.
Right, that's Ben.
You just gotta get to junior high, man. It's not that far away.
Fun to live with Ben.
Couldn't afford to go. Yeah. And you guys can't go by yourselves.
Why don't we just go down here, guys?
Okay, well, I'll see you on Monday.
Alright, that's tomorrow. Don't forget. I'll see you tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Okay.
At 11 or something-ish.
Noon. 12 noon.
Okay. My mom can't sign that thing in the wall.
The medical form or the permission
Yeah,
slip?
the metal.
We'll have them here. She doesn't have one. They're on the website if she wants to grab one. The packing list is on the website. All that stuff's on the website.
Okay, see you tomorrow.
Yeah, do that thing with the computer and I'll pay whatever you need.
Okay, cool. Were you able to find any sheets in the copy room?
You know, I realized I don't know where the copy room is.
That would make sense.
Yeah, just-
If you prefer, we also have it on the website.
Oh, perfect.
So yeah, just hit up the CCG Go page,
Okay,
and then under junior high, under social.
excellent. Alright.
Hi, ho.
Hello.
I actually have your original check uncashed sitting in my car. I have it in
Okay.
an envelope if you'd like me to get it for you, or else I can just turn it back.
No, I'll just put it back in the.
Okay.
Do you need me to drive tomorrow?
I am, it's so silly, I am one seat short, which is just obnoxious. I hate when it comes down to that math. Because then you get a whole other car and it's like, you have to rejigger every car to make sure people aren't alone, or you send one kid by themselves,
Yeah.
which is just easy. So my hope is, I'm going to talk to, there's a man named Clay Patel, and he's on the fringe of qualifying because we make sure it's always either parents of junior hires or someone who's been vetted for children's ministry before they can drive at this camp.
Right.
He is the dad of a high school freshman who was a junior hire here,
Oh, okay.
you know, all of a month ago.
Yeah.
So I think he'll qualify. He's already going to camp, bringing us up a trailer. So Emily has somewhere to put Jane down for a nap, which is just the coolest thing in the world.
That makes
And
sense.
we've been playing phone tag. I haven't got to talk to him. If he's willing to take a leader and some kids in there, we're set. We're done. It's Saturday I need people.
Okay.
Saturday I'm multiple seats short. So if you're free Saturday, that
I
would
can
be
do
amazing.
Saturday.
Okay.
Because I can take the expedition and I can get 7.
Okay. So does that 7 plus you or 7?
7
include-
plus me.
7 plus you. Wow. Okay.
Because
That might
it's
actually
six-
put us over the
6
line.
in the back.
Let me see. I
One in
keep
the
it all in a
front.
spreadsheet because I can't memorize all this stuff.
You have to. Well, you know what? I was just telling my girlfriend. She's been dating on Zeus and a couple other places. I said you need to get a whiteboard and just start writing their names down, the people who you are meeting or
Contacting
talking
and
and
meeting
who
and-
you're talking to.
Okay, so let's see.
Yeah, 'cause she said I can't keep them straight now.
And we can reimburse for gas. That's not a problem. Just keep the receipts from, before or after, whenever you want to do your fill.
I'm just full right now.
Okay, so say. Yeah, I think we took that final number. That sets us up for Saturday. Thank you so much. We'll actually have 3 extra seats to be able to bump people around. That's fantastic. Cool. Yeah, because we were.
Well,
Goodness, we were 8 seats short. Is that correct? No, we can't do
I
that.
knew Caitlin had come home Friday
Yeah.
because she even talked to
No,
Audrey.
we were 5 seats short, and now we're 3 seats over. So
Okay.
that makes sense.
She had talked to Audrey about, well, do you want to come home Friday or do you want to stay in Saturday?
Oh, yeah.
I said, well, I can drive. It's not,
I gotcha. Yeah, we were rather flummoxed. One of our leaders, Natalie, because we have 3 girl leaders going. My wife, Caitlin, and then Natalie. She apparently can't come till Wednesday morning.
Oh.
No. Like she thought she told us, but I would have remembered that we weren't going to have a leader for 2 days.
Yeah.
So I'll probably be on like massive baby duty, and then Emily can play more of a first fiddle, and then Natalie gets the Disney slot.
Yeah.
But oh well, it'll all work out. Just goofy. Yeah, this year's probably the most complex year of kids who are getting dropped off by their parents separate, not coming with the group,
Oh.
getting picked up by their parents separate, not coming home with the group.
Yeah.
I've got 2 on the way up, and it's different kids, and 2 on the way out, and it's different kids. So I love my spreadsheet because it's
Yeah.
way too much to keep track of. I
Yeah.
can't do it.
Well, that's what the whole thing when Dawn and I were first talking about when they were going to Young Life Camp, 'cause
Mm.
that's built in Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't quite have the money to do a hotel, but I'm like, I don't want to drive all the way up
Yeah.
and then have to drive all the way back, 6.5 hours straight drive, stops, and it's 8.5 going up, I think, so we stopped twice. So,
It's quite the drive.
it is, but you know what, that Young Life
Daniel. How are you? Good. How are you doing? It's whatever junior high boy wants, right? A mom who wants to hug and kiss him.
He's just overly tired. He didn't sleep.
I do know that. Yeah, he slept through a bit of today too. I
Well,
could tell he was pretty beat.
He was thinking maybe I would just take him home.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, no. Yeah, he only maybe got an hour of sleep last night. 'Cause
I'll
they
give
stayed
it a try
up
maybe.
late.
Okay.
Alright, so we will.
Well, we'll see you
I
tomorrow.
will
at the
see you
very least.
tomorrow, and then you just give me that check tomorrow. So I
Okay,
don't have to.
that's fine. I'll just have to wait at the check-in desk.
Alright, sounds good. See you.
See ya. Wow. They came out good, but I didn't think it was that good. Was it still warm? Yeah, once they get cold, they start getting their own version of stale. It's kind of hard. So I this year's thing is all of this crap. And then did like the cold ball for France. Or is it like the we do it every year because my mother is insisting that we do it. And so that we do all of these and like we practice and all that stuff and we got the scholarship. And then he calls. And so my niece is so so thanks so much thanks. And then yeah, I think Clay might be okay with taking some people on his truck if he's actually planning on meeting here at church.
Oh yeah?
I don't know, I have to talk to him, obviously. But he I think would fit the qualifications we usually have, which is junior high parents, since his kid was in junior high all a month ago. And then if that was the case, if I just jiggered over a leader and a few kids, we're covered because we only have one seat uncovered on Monday. And Stacy just volunteered to drive on Saturday. And she has like the 8-seat vehicle where, you know, the driver and then 7 more. And so, oh yeah, that's from the Ravenburns. I talked to them a while back, I forgot to mention it. We used to have one. It broke eventually because the kids are out. It's one of those basketball shoot loop in that returns. And it comes like down that back towards you. You can tell them about it. So yeah, anyways, Saturday's covered now. Because we had that one mom that I thought was Monday but was really Saturday. Zach's mom, Lori Rollin. So she volunteered for Saturday with the small car, and then Stacy volunteered with the big one. We're done. Yeah, it all came together.
That is good.
If you leave her, like she she will just start going down the hall. It's hilarious.
And that's a long haul. That's long for me to walk.
Oh, it's a long haul.
That's like a road trip for her.
Yeah, Emily has some photos of her like down by the radio door, just like looking back. What?
Like, yeah, what's going on?
What?
No big deal.
Oh. I'm sorry.
That's terrible.
Is it deep? Did I destroy it?
You mashed it into other garbage. I'm not pulling that out.
I'm so sorry. I was just trying to clean up as quick as I could.
I understand. You're doing good.
I just had a thought.
Okay. Would you like to walk me through this?
No, but
That makes me
can
happy.
you not derail me for a
Sorry,
few seconds?
sorry, I'm fine.
I just want to try to remember what the thought was. When you came in, you had that key. I was talking about projector's still on. There it is. I had to retrace every single
I was like,
step.
oh no, I hope I wasn't the element that disrupted the thought.
Oh no.
Because that'll happen to
I
me.
was going through the
It's
chain.
always me.
You walked across the room and it got my eyes to light on the screen still on. That's what happened.
I'm like, hey, I do remember Hebrew. And then I realized, oh no, it's just the font.